"We just think it's better if you don't come this year." That's what my mother said over the phone 11 days before Thanksgiving. No warmth in it. No hesitation either, like she'd rehearsed the sentence in the mirror first. "My name is Hannah. I'm 33. For 3 years, I had been quietly paying my parents' mortgage. My brother didn't know. My aunt didn't know. Nobody at that table knew." I said, "Okay," I hung up. I sat at my counter doing math I already knew the answer to: 3 years, 36 payments, $41,000. By the time Thanksgiving arrived, my mother was going to understand exactly how they'd gotten back on their feet. I just didn't know yet that I wouldn't be the one to tell her. Before I go any further, if this is your first time here, hit subscribe, because this channel drops a new story every single day. And since you're here already, where in the world are you watching this from right now? Drop it in the comments. I actually read every one. Now, back to the story. 3 years earlier, my father's hardware store closed. A chain opened 2 miles away. He was 61, too proud to start over. They fell behind on the mortgage in 4 months. I found out by accident, overheard my mother on the phone with a collections agency, using that careful, calm voice people use when they don't want a stranger to hear them panic. I offered to help before they asked. It felt obvious, not a sacrifice. My father cried the first time I set up the transfer. "You shouldn't have to do this," he said, 4 times. My mother sat beside him, hand on his back, not looking at either of us. What I didn't expect, how they'd explain their sudden stability to everyone else. "We restructured some things. Dad found consulting work." Vague sentences, protecting his pride in front of my brother Michael. My Aunt Carol, everyone who'd known Dad as a proud, self-sufficient man his whole life. I let it slide the first year. By the second year, correcting it would mean admitting I'd let a lie sit at every holiday table. That felt almost as bad as the lie itself. The real shape of it became clear at Dad's 60th birthday. Same steakhouse, every year. Michael said, cutting his steak, "It's good Mom and Dad figured things out on their own. I always worry about people who lean on somebody else." He had no idea I was somebody else. My mother's eyes flicked toward me. Half a second, a practiced nod, and I understood they weren't just protecting Dad's pride. They were letting Michael build his whole self-image, the responsible one, on a foundation that was mine. I said nothing that night either. Here's the part I think surprises people most, so let me get to it now instead of saving it for later. About 2 years in, I asked my mother directly why they'd never told Michael. She said something I don't think she meant to say so plainly. "Your brother needed to believe your father could still handle things. We didn't want him to see Dad as someone who needed saving." It was never about my pride. It was about protecting Michael's image of our father, a hierarchy where the son's respect mattered more than being honest with the daughter paying for that respect to stay intact. I didn't argue, but something in me stopped being patient after that. 3 more Thanksgivings passed before anything changed. 11 days before this year's, my mother called. "We just think it's better if you don't come." Reason: Michael's new fiancé was coming for the first time. They wanted things calm. I always brought a certain tension lately. What tension? She couldn't name one thing, just a feeling. A vague sense I was the wrong energy for a table I was financially holding together from 2 states away. I hung up and set the phone face down on the counter, carefully, like it might go off if I dropped it. My hands weren't shaking. That was the strange part. My first instinct wasn't quiet, actually. I dialed Michael's number. 2 rings. I hung up before he answered. I sat there ashamed of both impulses, wanting to tell him the loud way, like a weapon, and then choosing the quiet way instead, which wasn't really gentler. Just slower. Easier to defend later as an accident. I never fully resolved that. I chose quiet anyway. I called the mortgage servicer. Asked what happens if I let the payment lapse. Nothing dramatic, they said, just a late notice. I wasn't trying to destroy my parents. I just wanted the truth to surface on its own timeline, without me having to say it out loud at a table I wasn't welcome at anymore. I let it lapse. Then I texted my mother, "Won't be able to make the mortgage payment this month. I'm sure you and Dad have a plan for it, though you always do." Thanksgiving came and went without me. I spent it at a friend's, eating pie off a paper plate, feeling strangely light. The call came 4 days later. My mother's voice had a wobble in it I'd never heard from her before, not once in 33 years. The notice had arrived. My father opened it in front of Michael by accident. "Whose mortgage payment is this?" Michael had asked. "This has been coming out of somebody's account this whole time." There was no managing the story anymore. My mother had to tell him everything, fast, clumsily, in front of his fiancée, Priya, meeting the family for the first time over a conversation about 3 years of hidden debt. I found out later, Priya spent that whole meeting quietly panicking, thinking she'd walked into some ongoing crisis. It took Michael 2 weeks to reassure her otherwise. I hadn't thought about her, the stranger at the table who had nothing to do with any of it. "Why would you do that?" my mother asked, right before Thanksgiving. I told her the truth. I hadn't done it to hurt anyone. I just stopped being the only person managing a truth that wasn't mine to protect. If the timing felt cruel, I'd been managing a smaller version of that same feeling for 3 years, uninvited from the table I was paying to keep standing. It didn't end clean. Michael and I had one hard conversation, weeks later. He apologized for the steakhouse comment he didn't even remember making. My parents and I resumed the payments, new terms this time. Written down, Michael knows now, my mother's apology was more, "We should have handled it differently," than "I'm sorry for what that made you carry." I've made peace with that being the most I'll get. I apologized to Priya myself, not for the truth coming out, that needed to happen, just for the fact that it landed on her. Some things don't get a clean resolution. They just get quieter. And you decide how much of that quiet you're willing to keep living inside, and how much of the cost you're willing to own, even when the truth itself was one worth telling. Sometimes the truth doesn't need you to announce it. It just needs you to stop being the only thing standing between everyone else and the version of events they'd rather believe. Was letting that payment lapse a fair way to force the truth out, or was it its own kind of quiet manipulation? I still go back and forth. Tell me what you think. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. I post a new one every day.